The Sixers have suffered a frustrating loss at the hands of Doc Rivers and the Milwaukee Bucks in his Philadelphia homecoming. In this video, I want to break down a little bit of what went wrong in that game, what specifically frustrated me about Doc Rivers' pregame comments, which is the meat of this one, and then dive into a little bit of a future outlook of the Sixers as a whole. So to get the actual game out of the way and what exactly went down there, the Sixers ultimately suffering a 119-98 loss at the hands of the Milwaukee Bucks. Most of the blame I'm going to pretty much chalk up to the shooting variance here, that the Milwaukee Bucks shooting 18 of 37 from 3, 48.6% from beyond the arc. The Sixers 16 of 46, 34.8%, and frankly, the disparity was much larger for most of that game. That the Bucks came out shooting the absolute lights off, and there has to be a look yourself in the mirror moment for this Sixers team, knowing you're just not going to be able to go blow for blow with one of the Eastern Conference threats like the Milwaukee Bucks without Joel Embiid on the floor. Now, I'm not worried about this Milwaukee Bucks team in the long haul. I do not consider them legitimate championship contenders. I think that they are a hair below what teams like the Boston Celtics are, and frankly, I would throw the New York Knicks over them in the conversation, and most of that being because of the man Doc Rivers. And to dive into specifically what he said that motivated me to get on here and be frustrated, in his pregame speech, he did a lot of reflecting on his time in Philadelphia, was asked a number of questions by the media about his time coaching the Sixers, and had some interesting answers. So to dive into specifics, I want to start off with the beginning of his quote here, which I watched the whole video here, and the quote that jumped out to me at the start is, when asked about the series loss to the Celtics, he said, quote, "I don't know. I honestly haven't thought about it much since. Maybe they were better. Could that be a possibility?" And this once again brings in kind of the concept of the lack of accountability that Doc Rivers takes. And to further emphasize the deflections that he does do and the lack of accountability, the unwillingness to accept his role in the loss, he had this quote as well. To add on to that, he finishes by saying, "Maybe they were better. I thought Game 6 was our game. I didn't think Joel got the ball enough. Trust me, it was for him to get it, and he didn't get it. I don't know how healthy he was." So again, Doc Rivers might not even be wrong here, but it is the tone, the condescending nature, and just the at this point in time, like, even if he had fully deflected and been like, "We tried our best. I enjoyed my time in Philadelphia. I'm happy and focused on Milwaukee," I would be more satisfied with that answer from Doc Rivers. But instead, we do have to continue to hear the spewed nonsense, the lack of just accepting what he did wrong for this specific franchise, and now he is there in Milwaukee. Now, I mentioned that I do not believe in Milwaukee as a championship contender. Doc Rivers being front and center the reason for that. That even after this game and this record being without this game, so they're now 5-7, the Bucks are with Doc Rivers coaching. That is not exactly a linear stat. This is not all correlated to Doc Rivers. I do think, once again, that Adrian Griffin was dealt a bad hand, that I do have some sympathy for the process that he went down. And I think a lot of the issues with this team are issues that are going to show up regardless of whether or not Adrian Griffin is the coach, Doc Rivers is the coach, or Phil Jackson is the coach. That when you go from Drew Holiday to Damian Lillard as your point of attack primary defender, you're going to get worse defensively. That Drew Holiday being one of the premier perimeter defenders across the entire NBA, and Damian Lillard finding himself on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. But I do want to highlight again, look at this Sixers team. This is a look themselves in the mirror moment, that they do have to find a way to at least tread water and survive. That to dive into how things went down today with the specific box score, not a lot to break down here. Tyrese Maxey leading the way in scoring with 24 points in his 38 minutes of play. Shot just 8 of 19 from the field. He did have 7 assists. I will say for Maxey specifically, I don't think he found the proper balance today of being a playmaker, being a scorer, being a guy that initiates the offense. And frankly, what I think speaks to his importance most is how night and day different this team looks when he is on or off the floor. That when he is there, you do see how the offense cycles around him. And specifically when you look at this Sixers team, it has been the right roster construction mindset to get these essentially limited players that their strengths are so particular in fitting next to Joel Embiid, that I will highlight a guy like Nico Batum specifically, that his strengths as a player are he's a terrific entry passer, that he can make passes to Joel in the post, in the mid-range to create looks there, and he's an excellent catch and shoot player, that he quicker than any player I've ever seen as far as the no-dip three-pointer, his ability to get it off. But when you look at him in situations like this, where the team is starved for offense, it needs guys to create, he's not a guy that can step up and kind of fill that role. So that's when you do see the give and take. And I do want to dive in a little deeper on the box score. I will highlight Paul Reed. Thought he did very well in the starting role tonight. Bet 13 points, 8 rebounds, 6 of 13 from the field. He did knock down a three-pointer. He had 2 blocks as well. The 5 fouls are always going to be things that stick out with him. And I will say specifically, It's tough. That fifth foul was just straight up not one. It was a Giannis flop moment after the fact, and that's the hand that Paul Reed is dealt sometimes, that he does not have the friendliest whistle from the defensive side of things, and refs are looking for the things that he does actively do. He's a little too active with his hands, gets, over-engaged, over-exerts himself. Frankly, I live with that. That with Paul Reed, we kind of know the story at this point. As a backup center, I still think he's very good, but he does get a little overexposed when he's asked to do more and play the starter-level minutes that he's currently being asked to in Joel Embiid's absence. And by the way, it is 100% the right move to continue rolling with Paul Reed because Mo Bamba has been dreadful of late. So I will speak on that. To dive a little bit now, Buddy Hield, not a good game, likely his worst in a Sixers uniform, 11 points. Shot 3 of 9 from 3, 4 of 13 from the field. 2 of those three-pointers were in garbage time, so not quite as much weight there. He did have 4 assists, but didn't quite have the same playmaking gravity that he's flashed. And then Tobias Harris continues to absolutely frustrate me. 8 points and 8 rebounds in 31 minutes of play, 3 of 11 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. It has been absolutely brutal to watch Tobias Harris of late, and that is a major reason why this team is struggling to stay afloat. That you can cut it however you want to, that Tobias's role has changed forever, that he has been dealt a bad hand as far as what his expectations are. You can code it however you want. The bottom line is this man is making $40 million and not playing up to that standard, that he is not a guy that has been able to elevate his game without Joel Embiid. Frankly, all of the numbers have been worse without Joel. So I don't want to hear about these sacrificing his role. I don't want to hear that he's an assassin scorer, to tell a friend that he's a sharpshooter. I don't want any of that. I want to see Tobias Harris figure out how to play competent basketball because it has not been that way to this case. And I will shout out Tyrese Maxey once again, that this is a guy that continues to step up both on the court and as a leader with this team. That he had this quote after the game that I thought really encapsulates something about Maxey, that Tyrese Maxey on Tobias Harris' struggles in trying to get him going. I think it's probably on me. I got to do a better job of getting him better shots and getting him in better spots to be successful. So I love that from a leadership standpoint. It's very cool to see Tyrese Maxey being the guy to step up into those leadership skills, to take the responsibility on his shoulders and really deflect the blame from his teammates. But in all reality, while I love seeing that from an inside the locker room standpoint, it is not Tyrese Maxey's fault that Tobias Harris is playing like straight up garbage, that it has been disappointing the product he is putting on the floor. There is not an area of the game that he is shining. Even the 8 rebounds, I thought a couple of those were lucky ones that bounced out to him. If you'd asked me to guess the stats without looking at the box score, I would have guessed lower that based on what the impact on the game felt. And to dive down a little bit more on the box score, there are a couple guys that I do want to highlight here. Number 1, Kelly Oubre off the bench. 29 minutes, he added 12 points, 9 rebounds. Those were rebounds that I did feel. The 3 steals from Kelly Oubre. And the thing that I don't know whether to praise this or not for Kelly Oubre at this point. I love guys that dunk. I love guys that want to go up and put it down, dunk it on somebody's head. Kelly Oubre tries for it night in and night out. And I don't think I've seen him actually flush one down yet. That today specifically, there were 2 big time dunk attempts. One on Brook Lopez, and I forget who the second was. Neither of them he was successful, and both of them, I can't decide whether I want to praise Kelly for going for it and kind of setting that tone athletically, or maybe he's just a poor dunker who needs to lay off that at this point in time. Because seriously, it is every single game, and I've yet to see him actually pull off like a dunk on somebody. But again, I will take that he is going for it, and I did think overall he was very good in the minutes that he provided today. DeAnthony Melton has been a necessary change in this team. He added 16 points, shot 4 of 8 from 3. He's been very good since returning. Kyle Lowry I also thought was solid, even though the box score is not showing it. 3 points there, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. And Ricky Council IV, only 7 minutes of actions for him. He did add 2 points, a rebound, and an assist. That is the theme with Ricky once again, is he makes things happen. And I think as we try and figure out what to do with these Tobias Harris minutes, that I do think it is time to phone up the front office, say, Daryl, I'm sorry this man is making $40 million, but we have to make some changes. That is what the proper response should be. And Ricky Council is very clearly, to me, being a guy that should feed into some of those minutes. KJ Martin didn't step on the floor today. That he was out with an ankle injury, and we still did not see the boost from Ricky Council IV. So very frustrating the way that is playing out there. And when I talk about the Tobias Harris conversation, that I see so much pushback on the Sixers will never bench Tobias Harris because he's making the $40 million. And I understand the logistics of that. I get why that is the case and why that is likely the Sixers' mindset. But it's just a wrong slant to take. That if you want to compare this to an organization that is committed to winning at a high level, look at the Golden State Warriors and look at Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson has not been the best version of himself this season. They ultimately put him to come off the bench. Klay Thompson's making $43 million this year. Klay Thompson has 4 rings on his finger. This is a guy that has way more reason and has been a way more crucial part to that Warriors dynasty than Tobias Harris has been to this Sixers team. So if Klay Thompson is willing to swallow the pride and come off the bench, if the Warriors are willing to make him do that, Tobias Harris is not immune either. That if that is the best route for this Sixers team, if this is a guy who continues to play at this level, there have to be adjustments that are made. And I do think Nick Nurse is weighing, do I lose him for the entire season mentally? If I do drop him to the bench, is this something that's going to frustrate him? How will he respond? These are all the conversations that are going through his head. But the point blank answer is the Sixers have been a worse basketball team with Tobias Harris on the floor, and only he can hold the responsibility for that one. I don't know how that turns itself around. The bottom line is he just has to straight up play better, but it is frustrating in a day like today where the Sixers desperately needed somebody to step up and produce. The guy that is the highest paid active player on the roster was nowhere to be found. So we'll see what ultimately happens from here. It does suck that the Sixers had to take this L from Doc Rivers right in his Philadelphia return. Doc did get the nice Philadelphia welcome, a booze from the crowd when they did announce his name. Some mixed reviews for Pat Bev, which I was curious about coming in. I would say mostly positive, that it was mostly claps. Pat Bev, of course, hit us with the belt-to-ass tour immediately after the game, as expected there. But this is just kind of one of those frank of the matter that you have to wear this loss. You know that this is not a Sixers team that can compete with the upper echelon of the East until Joel Embiid is back on the floor. But they ultimately got to find a way to tread water in the process. Appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. Let me know how much the Doc Rivers comments bothered you, your thoughts on this team, how much it has changed over the win against the Cavs and then the loss to the Bucks, where your mind is at. And I'll be back talking with you the rest of the week right here on Sixers Digest. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, and I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.